Hi there, my name is Jamieson, and this video is being recorded with gratitude on the Coast Salish unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations in so-called Vancouver, so-called Canada. Homeschooling can be hard, can't it? But so can going to regular school as well. It really just depends on how we choose to set up our day and set up our weekly routines. One of the reasons why I chose to homeschool is that I wanted a different way of life for my child as he moves through his early years. And so my son is in grade 1 this year, and we've been homeschooling for 2 years with Origins curriculum. So the 4 main areas that I would like to focus on today and offer examples of how we can set up lessons that really work for the family and also acknowledge all of our emotional regulation, all of our sensitivities throughout the day, when we work best, when we don't. The first thing is setting up the home for success. So as you can see behind me, this is kind of one of our schooling areas, which also happens to be my son's bedroom as well. You can't see it, but the bed's back there. So we do a fair amount of our schooling here, especially when we're starting to open the day up. And we do that actually in bed as we're getting up. So setting the home up is for success is where could you or should you be doing most of the schooling so that you can set boundaries around those times of day, meaning that it should also be flexible. So the second thing is establishing a flexible routine that has freedom and flexibility. Now we all need structure and routine. But we also know that that's going to shift day to day based on the emotional needs of our children and also the emotional needs of us as family members as well, because part of that harmonious home is everybody working together. So that routine is really going to be different for every home. So we may start at 9 in the morning, we may start at 11 in the morning. It just depends on how our morning goes. But what I have found that works the best is that neurologically, kids and all humans are more productive in the mornings, and they often need more downtime in the afternoons. So I like to structure my science, my math, my literacy, some of the skills that take a little bit more cognitive function, that take a little bit more fine motor control or gross motor control earlier in the day, so that we can then have more playtime, more art, more crafts, more mindfulness towards the end of the day. You have to figure out what works for you too. Lesson plans. What I focused on the last few years is integrating them. So it can be really challenging to go, well, what lesson plan should I be focusing on this week? What should I be doing? Well, I'm going to give you a rundown of my day so that you can see what it's like to be in a homeschooling environment if you're struggling and having challenges with when should I do the lessons, where should I do them, and then also aligning those lessons with your child's emotional needs, regulatory needs. Play zones. Play zones around the house are the best way to move from one room to the next, from one activity to the next. So that might be a messy room where you have more sensory exploration. You have water beads and kinetic sand and anything where you're okay with that room getting a little bit messy. Because when we're in messy, we also get to learn at the same time. Having a zone that's specific for movement, where maybe that's where we do our mindfulness and our movement together. Having a quiet space or a quiet room where your child can go with you or independently to have some downtime. And that might be a nice dark space that has dim lighting, that's quiet, where they can read, they can lie down, and then they can just be on their own, or just allow there to be less sensory information. So we're not being so overloaded. So these different play zones around the house can really benefit both the child and the homeschooling parent, because you can move around into different rooms and it's just much easier. And I'm going to show you a little bit about that in a second. Now, this is how I've structured things. I have an opening and closing book that has all the lessons in them. So that way, Leo and I, when we wake up in the morning, we have our opening routine where we do mindfulness. We actually use our exit tickets as entry tickets. We talk about what we want to learn, what we want to improve. We review those at the end of the day as well. And then, of course, we have our breakout toolbox where we have all of our different types of zones of regulation, different types of, if we're not having our needs met, how can we improve that? How can we get back to that green zone? okay? The workbook, which is really the blueprint with everything in it. I take out lessons daily from there and the opening and closing, and then I put in Leo's daily workbook, okay, with color coding for all the different things we're going to work on. So what I'd like to do now is actually just show you and move you through a typical day with Leo and I, because I think seeing it real time is going to be probably the best way to learn, and the best way to maybe say, oh, that might work for my family, I'm going to try that, or that's not going to work for my family, but how can I do it differently? So let's go take a peek. So I want to just go over what a kind of a typical week looks like in our house. So here I have my goals, and the things that we're working on with Leo are sight words. So being able to see words like sky, sun, forest, trees when we're reading books. Simple addition, we use the game Clue. You'll see that in a minute. It's fantastic. Story summarization, where we'll read and we'll have a specific book that we work through, and then we look at the 4 W's, which is what, where, who, and when. We cut shapes for fine motor. We write letters. We're working on the R right now. We draw pictures using a fun game of Junior Pictionary. Fine motor, which is also integrated into playing the games of Clue and Wowcraft and some of these other games that my son just really enjoys. And then negotiations is during lunch or dinner. So we pick one meal of the day where he will be involved in finding the appliances. We have games. He's involved in food prep. Open and closing, which is what did I learn, least and favorite activity, and zones of regulation. Always looking at how can we better manage our stress levels and our energy levels when we need to get energy out or conserve more energy through breath or movement. A typical day will kind of look like this, as I've kind of color-coded everything. Now, this was a longer day where we just had a lot of fun. Not all days look like this. Some days may look like half of this. So here we have about 6 hours of learning all of the things. We do a few check-ins throughout the day. We look at, hard and soft C sounds. So C was earlier this week. R's are in the later week. Free play with family. So really, one of the things that I would suggest is look at what you're already doing in the day and figure out where you can integrate some of these lessons that can be a little more structured, but that are already part of your daily routine. So once the week is done, or each day is done, is that I will transfer those lessons into each one of these binders. So the reason why I like to use color-coded binders instead of one big binder is because I can go back at the end of the year, check in with Leo's catchment school, and talk specifically about goals, successes, challenges. What I also find super helpful is having a couple different bins with kind of your child's preferred activities. So our son loves nature activities, whether they be inside or outside. And then color and pattern recognition, he really likes because when we're playing games, it's more fun. And it helps to develop better emotional resilience as well as cognitive and social skills. So here's a typical day. We start as a family discussing how we're feeling. We do a body sensation check-in. We look at our toolbox. And then we also choose a couple things from our entry tickets that we may want to focus on throughout the day. And then we'll circle back to those as exit tickets towards the end of the day. So next we will often have movement and mindfulness together. So this is our movement space, and I've got a binder specifically in our space in our garage where I have everything from yoga to stretching to body or brain breaks. I've got different types of exercise options as well. Just a really robust toolkit that we can pull from. And then having things like color and pattern recognition again. So movement dice so that we can have those on demand, and then different things we can use around the house, movement decks, so different supplementary options that we can integrate daily. So every day is different and new. So today I chose color and pattern recognition to also help develop gross motor stability and strength. So using just things around the house for find a circle, find the rectangle, find the square, find the triangle. And it's a great way for us to play, and Leo will often have me do it directly afterwards and him be the coach. So when it comes to math and literacy and writing, games can really make a big difference. So what we will do is I have Leo for just this week working on the letter R, big R, little r. And then also working on his math skills by counting out dice, fine motor by being able to play the game of Clue, which he absolutely loves, spelling it out in different ways as well with big letters, with small letters and Scrabble. So visually finding the letters and then applying that to writing them down, while at the same time keeping it fun, playing a game that he enjoys. Perfect. So as I mentioned, integrating lessons can be really helpful with spending quality time on various activities. So here we have science, we have a little bit of reading, we have cultural history as well. So really doubling down on a few different focal points in one lesson. So we went out to the trails near our house on Musqueam territory, and we collected some lichens. So we'll do a little art with this. We will also update his vocabulary. We've been looking at habitat and biome, but I'll be adding in photosynthesis. I'll be adding in symbiosis as well, and then cultural history. So going on field trips to the Museum of Vancouver and talking about the Indigenous people of our particular territory, which is so-called Vancouver, and that's the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And so it also gives him an opportunity to learn more about the culture of so-called Canada, so-called Vancouver, and then we can start to discuss his cultural heritage. So when it comes to mealtime, we find that having games during lunch or during dinner or breakfast can really, really help. I also have a separate binder that I place in the kitchen that has everything that we use in the kitchen. So finding appliances, once a week we focus on a specific food, a color of food, and then of course different types of activities that can help engage Leo in the process of making food, but also just understanding food and how everything works. So we have lots of different games and different types of supplemental things where he can choose what he wants to put in there. And it just so happens we're having tacos for lunch. And it's a really easy way of being able to incorporate play as well as incorporate lessons. So as an example today, we're playing the Race to Taste Discovery game, which has a little bit of math, a little bit of word recognition, color recognition, trying different foods. And then afterwards, we're going to play some bingo and talk about the digestive system with our new friend Steve here. Say hello, Steve. So we do a lot of reading. We will probably read anywhere between 7 to 10 books a day. So there's a couple things that I like to do with Leo in building in other lessons. First is summarizing who, what, where, when. As we read the book, we go back and we draw pictures and we talk about who, what happened, when did it happen, and where did it happen. And then Leo can then take this to daddy or a grandparent or a friend, whoever's kind of happens to be in our house, and let them know what he learned, being able to recall that story. The other thing that we do is just slow it down. So what words can he visually see and be able to sound out? And so we're currently have a list of about 20 words that we're working on that he's slowly being able to memorize. And that's a focus that we do week to week. And lastly, towards the end of the day, we focus on mindfulness again. So here we'll talk about yoga, breathing, emotional regulation. We'll look at our trackers and we'll have our exit cards. And the focus here is we usually have a couple hours in the morning and a couple hours in the afternoon of homeschooling. And then again, integrating as much as we can into playtime. Okay, so that is a typical day for us in homeschooling. Every day is a little different, but we always focus on the same goals somewhere throughout those days. So I just want to recap the 4 most important things that we can do when we're homeschooling to nurture our own energetic output and input as well as our child's, is establishing a home that is successful for everyone. Having play zones in your house where you can move from one room to the next. Having an opportunity to have a flexible schedule. So with some structure, but being flexible around what that looks like day to day. And lastly, the lesson plans is integrate the lesson plans so that you can cover a lot more topics in a shorter period of time. But if you can make them playful at the same time, then your child learns through exploration and play just a lot better. And as adults, I think we need more of that anyways. The more you can get outside as well, the better, depending on where you live. So I hope this has helped a little bit with looking at how to integrate the homeschooling. Again, it's one perspective. It works for our family. So take what you need, leave the rest, and enjoy it.